The morning air outside the Harris County Courthouse was unusually crisp for Houston in late spring, carrying a faint scent of rain that had soaked the city the night before. Pedestrians hurried past the grand limestone building, briefcases clutched tightly, heels clicking against the worn stone steps. Inside, the marble floors reflected the muted sunlight streaming through tall windows, and the hushed murmurs of families, lawyers, and courthouse staff echoed like whispers of tension in a cathedral. It was a day like any other in America's legal machinery, but no one inside anticipated the storm that would erupt in the next few hours. Lily's mother, Jennifer, held the tiny hand of her 3-year-old daughter, navigating the crowded hallways with a mixture of anxiety and determination. Jennifer's life had been a delicate balancing act since separating from her ex-husband, but today, all her focus was on keeping Lily calm in an environment that seemed made for intimidation. Jennifer's stomach twisted with nerves. She could feel her pulse in her throat as they approached courtroom 4B, the room where the custody hearing would determine who would control the next chapter of Lily's life. Officer Ramirez, a seasoned Houston police officer with 20 years of experience, stood near the courtroom entrance, his posture rigid but composed. At his side was Max, his K-9 partner, a German shepherd with a glossy black and tan coat and eyes that seemed almost human in their intelligence. Max was alert, trained for decades of careful detection, obedience, and courtroom security. His ears twitched at every sound, the shuffle of papers, the faint click of heels, the rustle of coats. Ramirez patted Max's flank, whispering reassurance, though the dog's tension was palpable. He had been with many children, but something about Lily caught his attention the moment she stepped into the room. The courtroom itself was a scene of organized chaos. Rows of wooden benches were filled with families, lawyers, and a handful of curious onlookers. The judge's bench loomed high, polished to a deep shine, with the American flag standing tall beside it. Cameras had been allowed in this case due to public interest, and reporters murmured quietly in the back, adjusting lenses and microphones. The air smelled faintly of coffee, legal paper, and polished wood, but underneath it all was an unspoken tension, a nervous energy that made every movement seem amplified. Jennifer guided Lily to a seat in the front row. Hopping proximity would calm her daughter. Lily's small fingers gripped the edge of the bench, knuckles white, as she surveyed the room with wide, curious eyes. Despite her young age, there was a sharpness in her gaze, a quiet intelligence that seemed to notice things adults overlooked. She didn't fidget or cry as most children her age might. Instead, she scanned the space, her eyes settling finally on Max. The dog, initially distracted by the flurry of activity, froze when their gazes met. His body stiffened, head tilted, ears perked, as if sensing something beyond human perception. The gavel struck sharply, echoing across the courtroom and signaling the beginning of proceedings. Judge Carter, a woman in her mid-50s with a reputation for fairness and a no-nonsense approach, adjusted her glasses and glanced over the room. Her eyes were stern but not unkind, taking in the families, lawyers, and law enforcement present. She expected routine arguments, procedural exchanges, and perhaps a touch of emotion, but nothing that could prepare her for the chain of events about to unfold. The prosecution began outlining the case, detailing custody arrangements, visitation disputes, and claims of neglect and concern. The words were technical, precise, and practiced, but Lily's attention never wavered from Max. She leaned slightly toward her mother, whispering small observations under her breath, words too quiet for anyone else to hear. Max, too, seemed tuned into her energy. He paced slightly, nostrils flaring, casting intermittent glances toward her. Ramirez noticed but said nothing, trusting the dog's instincts without alarm. As the testimony began, the room was filled with a strange tension, a juxtaposition of ordinary legal procedure and a mounting sense of unease. Witnesses spoke of visitation schedules and minor infractions, but the undercurrent of something more profound thrummed beneath every word. Lily's mother adjusted her daughter on her lap, whispering soothing words, trying to calm her. Yet Lily's attention remained fixed on Max, as if she were communicating silently, understanding something adults could not. The dog's body became taut, tail stiff, eyes locked on the child. It was an unusual sight. An untrained observer might dismiss it, but in law enforcement circles, the connection was unmistakable. Then, as the prosecutor listed minor behavioral complaints against Lily's father, the toddler leaned forward slightly, lips barely moving, and whispered two words that would change everything. "Bad man." The courtroom froze. A gasp rippled through the benches as heads turned toward the child. Lawyers exchanged shocked glances. Judge Carter paused mid-sentence, her gavel hovering above the bench. Officer Ramirez's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing as Max's growl rumbled low in his throat, a warning that reverberated across the polished floor. The dog's ears shot forward, his body shifted into alert stance, muscles coiled as if ready to spring. Jennifer's heart pounded in her chest. Her daughter had never spoken in court before. Her tiny, simple words carried weight far beyond her years, yet there was a clarity, an undeniable certainty. "Bad man." The words hung in the air, impossibly potent. The courtroom, accustomed to legal jargon and procedural decorum, now confronted an innocence and instinct that seemed almost supernatural in its precision. Suddenly, Max bolted from Ramirez's side, barking sharply, his paws skidding against the marble floor. Chairs scraped as officers moved to intercept him, but the dog ignored them entirely, fixating on a man seated near the back. The man's face went pale, his posture stiffening, eyes darting nervously. Murmurs escalated into whispers, then into tense conversations. Cameras clicked and flashed, capturing every second. Judge Carter slammed the gavel once, twice, trying to restore order, but the courtroom had transformed. This was no longer a standard custody hearing. It had become a crucible of instinct, truth, and tension, where a toddler's words and a dog's intuition intersected in a way no adult could have anticipated. Jennifer held Lily close, whispering reassurances, though her own mind raced with questions. How had her daughter known? What did Max sense that humans could? And most importantly, what would happen next? The room was suspended in a heartbeat of disbelief, anticipation, and fear, each second stretching longer than the last. Outside, the sounds of the city continued obliviously, cars honking, distant sirens wailing, people walking by. But inside courtroom 4B, time seemed to stop. All eyes were on a 3-year-old girl and a German shepherd, the unlikely duo at the center of a drama no one in Houston would forget. The air crackled with potential, and the first tremors of chaos had already begun. Judge Carter leaned forward, eyes narrowing, realizing that this was the moment she had been trained for but could never fully anticipate. The court was no longer a room of laws and papers. It was a stage where instinct, innocence, and truth collided. And in that moment, everyone knew, without understanding how, that the outcome of this day would reverberate far beyond these polished floors, echoing in ways no one could yet imagine. The courtroom erupted in murmurs and gasps as Max's growl filled the air. People instinctively leaned back in their seats, clutching children or glancing nervously at each other. The man at the back of the room, Lily's father, shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between his lawyer and the dog, now a taut figure of vigilance. For a moment, it seemed as if the room itself was holding its breath, suspended between disbelief and an unspoken warning. Officer Ramirez's heart raced. He had never seen Max react like this. The dog's instincts, honed over years of service, were screaming at him. Danger, present and immediate. Jennifer clutched Lily tighter, feeling her daughter's tiny hand stiffen against hers. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, though her own voice trembled. Lily, calm despite the chaos around her, tilted her head toward Max and repeated her words just above a whisper, "Bad man." There was no fear in her voice, only certainty, and somehow that certainty gave Max purpose, focus. The dog's low growl evolved into a sharp bark, a warning that cut through the tension like lightning. Judge Carter adjusted her glasses, leaning forward. She had presided over hundreds of cases, from minor disputes to high-profile criminal trials, yet nothing could have prepared her for this. Her gavel hovered midair as she tried to restore order, but it was futile. Lawyers whispered urgently to one another, reporters shifted to capture every detail, and spectators craned their necks, drawn into a moment that felt almost cinematic in its intensity. The man at the back of the room fidgeted. His calm veneer cracked, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the dog and the child. "This is ridiculous," he muttered to his attorney. "It's a toddler, a dog, neither of them is evidence." But the unease in his voice betrayed him, a subtle tremor revealing a truth he could not deny. Max's focus never wavered, every muscle in his body screamed alert, ready to respond to an unseen threat. Lily shifted slightly on her mother's lap and pointed toward the man. "He took me," she whispered again, voice firm, unwavering. A collective gasp echoed across the room. The words, simple and raw, carried a weight no legal brief could match. For the first time, the courtroom felt less like a theater of law and more like a stage of instinct and truth, where age and experience were irrelevant in the face of danger. Officer Ramirez stepped forward cautiously, hand on Max's harness. "Stay," he murmured, though even he could feel the tension vibrating in the dog's body. Max's ears twitched. He didn't move from the line of sight between Lily and the man. It was as if the dog understood the significance of her words, responding not just to scent, but to some innate, almost mystical connection between them. Ramirez's training told him to maintain control, but his instincts screamed otherwise. Something was very, very wrong. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, a mix of fear and pride. Her daughter, only 3 years old, had just spoken words that carried a gravity no adult could have anticipated. She whispered softly to her, trying to soothe her nerves while marveling at the uncanny bond forming before her eyes. "You're brave, baby girl," she said. "So brave." Lily's response was a slight nod, her gaze fixed, unwavering. She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. Her instinct aligned perfectly with Max's. The courtroom's energy shifted, from shock to tense curiosity. Spectators leaned forward, their phones now recording every movement. Reporters murmured among themselves, whispering into microphones, knowing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Judge Carter, ever composed, realized this was no longer about custody alone. What was unfolding transcended the written law. It was a collision of innocence, intuition, and danger, a drama neither precedent nor procedure could contain. The man at the back grew increasingly agitated. His face paled, sweat beading along his hairline. He glanced at his lawyer, then at Max, then at Lily. "This is absurd," he said again, louder this time, desperation creeping into his tone. But no one moved him. The child and the dog were undeterred. Max barked sharply once more, advancing a step, the warning clear: retreat or face consequences. The tension was palpable. You could almost taste it in the air. Every person in the room felt it. The unspoken truth that something had been revealed that couldn't be ignored. Detective Morales, sitting unobtrusively to the side, leaned forward, noticing details others might have missed. Max's behavior, Lily's words, they weren't coincidences. They were warnings. Morales had handled child safety cases before, but rarely did instincts align so clearly with evidence yet unseen. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. If what this child and this dog were signaling was true, the ramifications could ripple far beyond the walls of this courtroom. The judge finally spoke, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Order, everyone, please be seated." Her tone was firm, authoritative, yet underlined with a tremor she couldn't fully hide. Max's attention never wavered, even as officers cautiously approached, trying to assess the situation without escalating it. The dog's focus, unwavering and sharp, held the room in thrall. The law could wait. Instinct demanded action. Then, in a moment that made the room collectively inhale, Max lunged slightly forward, barking furiously, eyes locked on the man. Security officers instinctively reached to restrain him, but Ramirez raised a hand. "Wait," he said, voice tense. "He's reacting for a reason." The man froze, realizing his panic had been detected. Sweat ran down his temple. He could feel the courtroom's eyes on him, the judgment unspoken but unanimous. Lily's small voice broke the tense silence again. "He's bad. she said, this time louder, projecting across the room as though repeating it made it truer. Max barked once in response, a sharp, commanding sound that made even the most skeptical onlookers flinch. The courtroom held its breath, suspended in a moment that balanced on the knife edge of disbelief and revelation. Jennifer's heart pounded. She hadn't expected her daughter to act like this, to speak so clearly, to command attention so profoundly. She whispered softly, "It's okay, Lily, it's okay." But even she could feel the magnitude of the moment. Something extraordinary was unfolding, and neither she nor anyone in the room could predict where it would end. The reporters in the back began whispering, capturing footage, their voices low but urgent. Social media, unbeknownst to anyone yet, was about to explode with this scene. A toddler fearless, a police dog vigilant, and a man whose carefully hidden past was unraveling before dozens of witnesses. Judge Carter, sensing the growing chaos, tapped her gavel again, trying to reclaim control. But this was not a matter of control. It was a matter of truth revealed in the most unexpected, startling, and emotional way. As the courtroom adjusted to the reality of what was happening, the man at the back tried to compose himself, but it was too late. His eyes darted, hands shaking slightly, as the realization sank in. A 3-year-old child and a police dog had just turned the entire proceeding upside down. The room, once orderly, now vibrated with tension, curiosity, and fear. No one could have anticipated this chain of events, least of all the judge who had presided over countless hearings. And then Max growled again, low and menacing, ears forward, tail stiff. His gaze never left Lily, as if the child's words were commands and he, the loyal guardian, had no choice but to obey. The judge's pulse quickened. The man's panic became visible. The tension hit a peak, the room silent except for Max's restrained but insistent barking. Everyone waited, breathless, for what would happen next. The unspoken question hung in the air. What had Lily seen or sensed that the adults could not? And could a toddler's instinct, paired with a dog's trained senses, be enough to uncover a danger hidden in plain sight? The answers would come soon. But for now, the courtroom was suspended in a fragile electric stillness, every eye locked on the unlikely pair whose courage and intuition were about to rewrite the rules of the day. The moment Max barked, the courtroom erupted. Chairs scraped against the marble floor, papers fluttered, and a few spectators gasped audibly, some clutching their children tightly. Officers instinctively moved toward the dog, but Max's eyes never wavered from Lily, standing small yet unflinching beside her mother. His growl deepened, reverberating like a warning siren through the polished courtroom. For a trained K9, there were few triggers that demanded immediate action, but Lily's words had ignited something primal, an instinctual need to protect. The man at the back of the room, once smug and composed, froze completely. His jaw tightened, and a bead of sweat ran down his temple as he realized the shift in power. It wasn't lawyers or judges controlling this moment. It was a toddler and a German shepherd. Whispered comments rippled across the benches. Did she just? That dog is trained, but why is he reacting like this? No one could explain the surreal scene unfolding. Judge Carter pounded the gavel repeatedly, her voice authoritative yet tinged with rising panic. Order in the courtroom. Everyone remain calm. But calm was a fragile illusion, shattered by instinct and truth. Max barked again, a sharp, commanding sound that froze the room in its intensity. His hackles were raised, tail rigid, muscles coiled as if ready to spring at a threat only he could perceive. It was impossible to ignore. The dog's alert, protective behavior was a silent signal that danger was present. Jennifer instinctively shielded Lily, wrapping an arm around her daughter while trying to whisper reassurance. "It's okay, baby," she said, heart hammering. Yet even she couldn't suppress the surge of fear mingled with awe. Lily's tiny hand rose slightly, pointing deliberately at the man. "He took me," she repeated, voice calm, unwavering. There was no hesitation, no fear, only clarity. It was as if the child had always known, deep in some instinctive memory, exactly what to say to reveal the truth. Max lunged forward, paws skidding on the polished floor, barking ferociously. Security officers moved quickly to restrain him, but Officer Ramirez raised his hand, voice firm. "No, let him, he knows." The room held its collective breath. Every eye tracked Max as he advanced a few steps, then stopped short, ears alert, eyes locked on the man at the back. The man's confident facade crumbled. His lawyer shouted, but the words barely registered. Everyone in the room could sense the tension building to a breaking point. Spectators leaned forward, some standing, some craning their necks, drawn into the drama. Phones lifted, cameras clicked, capturing a moment that would soon go viral. Social media was unknowingly preparing to erupt with footage of a toddler and a dog upending a courtroom. Reporters whispered to each other, jotting notes frantically. The atmosphere was charged, a mix of fear, curiosity, and disbelief. People who had arrived expecting a mundane custody hearing now found themselves witnesses to an event that felt larger than life, cinematic, almost unreal. The man in question shifted uncomfortably. His attempts at composure failed under the scrutiny of dozens of eyes, the piercing gaze of Judge Carter and Max's relentless focus. "This is ridiculous," he stammered, voice tight with panic. "A child, a dog, this isn't legal evidence." But no one heard him over the growing tension, the collective sense that something was being exposed, that the truth was slipping into view in the most extraordinary way. Detective Morales, sitting unobtrusively at the side, leaned forward. He had seen countless cases of child endangerment, but rarely had instinct and circumstance aligned so starkly. Max's behavior wasn't coincidence. It was trained response amplified by instinctual awareness. And Lily's words, the simplicity of them, their precision, had pinpointed the source of danger with a clarity that adults often missed. Morales felt the weight of responsibility settle over him like a storm cloud. If this was ignored, consequences could be catastrophic. Jennifer's eyes welled with tears. She had always known her daughter was special, but never like this. She whispered softly, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "You're so brave, baby girl, so brave." Lily nodded slightly, eyes never leaving Max. The bond between them was palpable, electric, unspoken. It was a connection that transcended age and training, instinct and innocence intertwining to confront a danger that the room's adults had failed to see. Max barked again, louder, more insistent, the sound cutting through the courtroom like a gunshot. Officers flinched, but Ramirez held firm. "Stay, he's reacting for a reason," he said, voice low but commanding. The dog's growl deepened into a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. The tension in the room thickened, palpable enough to taste. Every person present, from the judge to the spectators, understood on some level. This was no ordinary courtroom dispute. Something far more serious, far more dangerous had been uncovered. The man at the back of the room shifted in his seat, his face paling. He leaned toward his lawyer, whispering urgently, "She's just a kid, it's not real evidence." But his words rang hollow even to him. Every fiber of his being screamed that the child and the dog had just revealed a threat that could no longer hide. The courtroom collectively sensed the imbalance. The scales of power had shifted away from legal procedure toward instinct, courage, and truth. Judge Carter's pulse quickened. She had dealt with tension before, high-stakes cases, and even courtroom outbursts, but nothing approached this. Her gavel hovered midair as she weighed the unprecedented situation. A toddler, barely able to form sentences, and a police dog, trained to detect threats, were dictating the pace of the courtroom. The judge realized that conventional order and procedure were powerless against the unfolding reality. Something extraordinary was happening, and the law alone couldn't contain it. Lily spoke again, her voice small but unshakable. "He's bad." Max barked sharply in agreement, a sound that seemed to echo through the marble hall. Spectators instinctively recoiled, the room vibrating with tension. The man's composure snapped. Sweat ran freely down his temple as his gaze flicked nervously between child, dog, and judge. He had tried to project confidence, but in that instant the illusion collapsed entirely. Officers prepared to intervene, unsure whether to restrain the man or the dog. Ramirez kept his hand on Max's harness, feeling the dog's muscles tense like coiled steel. Every instinct screamed that this was serious, that the child's words had unearthed a threat no adult could ignore. The room's energy surged, a tide of fear, suspense, and disbelief that could not be controlled. Jennifer whispered to Lily, trying to soothe her daughter despite the chaos. It's okay, baby." But even she felt the adrenaline, the weight of the moment. Lily's hand remained firm on Max's leash, her gaze steady. In the child's eyes was clarity, a terrifying yet awe-inspiring understanding that adults struggled to comprehend. Max barked again, this time circling the man, low growl vibrating through the room. The judge's gavel finally fell, striking the polished wood, but it had little effect. "All right, let's maintain order," she called, voice louder, though the command seemed almost irrelevant. The unfolding reality could not be subdued by words or authority alone. Detective Morales rose quietly, approaching cautiously, observing both Lily and Max. He had seen many forms of evidence, testimonies, and confessions, but none like this. This was instinct and innocence converging to expose a hidden truth. Morales' mind raced. If Lily's words and Max's behavior were accurate, the implications could ripple far beyond the courtroom. The man had been exposed, and yet Morales couldn't shake the growing fear that the danger might not be confined to this room. The courtroom held its collective breath as Lily repeated her two words one final time. "Bad man." Max barked in agreement, muscles coiled, ready to act. The tension was unbearable, a silent scream echoing through the polished hall. Everyone understood, even if they couldn't articulate it. The courtroom was no longer governed solely by law. It was under the command of truth, instinct, and courage, embodied in a 3-year-old girl and her loyal dog. And then, as if on cue, Max growled lowly toward a shadowy figure near the entrance, one who had remained unnoticed in the chaos. Heads turned, whispers rose again, and the sense of danger intensified. The courtroom, once a place of procedure and decorum, had become a stage for a primal drama, innocence exposing malevolence, instinct guiding justice. Chaos had arrived. The courtroom was on edge, a tangible pulse of fear and disbelief vibrating through every person present. Max, the German shepherd, remained poised like a sentinel, eyes locked on the man at the back of the room. His low growl reverberated through the polished floorboards, a warning none could ignore. Jennifer held Lily close, feeling the tiny girl's heartbeat steady and unnervingly calm against her chest. Despite the chaos, Lily's composure was unsettling, almost otherworldly. She had spoken 2 simple words, "bad man," and the truth they carried was about to surface. Detective Morales, having quietly observed from the side, rose to approach Judge Carter. His expression was grave. "Your Honor, if I may," he said, voice steady but urgent. "We have a situation that requires immediate attention. That individual in the back, he is under investigation for prior incidents of child endangerment that were previously dismissed. What's happening now aligns with patterns we've seen in the past, patterns that no one here should underestimate." Gasps spread through the courtroom. Lawyers whispered among themselves, spectators leaned forward in disbelief, and reporters shifted, sensing the magnitude of what was unfolding. The man at the back turned pale, lips pressing into a thin line. Sweat rolled down his temple, and his hands fidgeted nervously. His attempts at appearing composed were futile. The collective gaze of dozens of witnesses, coupled with the unrelenting attention of Max and the piercing innocence of Lily, left him exposed. Judge Carter leaned forward in her seat, heart pounding. She had presided over hundreds of cases, but the present situation defied every precedent. Evidence, procedure, and protocol seemed inadequate in the face of the stark reality emerging before her eyes. Max's growl escalated, vibrating through the courtroom, drawing the attention of everyone present. The dog, trained for obedience, was no longer following commands. He was acting on instinct, an instinct that reinforced Lily's words with startling clarity. Lily's voice, small yet resolute, broke the tense silence. "He hurt me," she whispered, pointing firmly toward the man. The words carried the weight of a truth that no legal brief could capture, no procedural argument could counter. Officer Ramirez stepped closer, hand on Max's harness, careful to maintain control while allowing the dog to respond to the danger. Max's eyes never left the man, muscles taut like coiled steel. Jennifer's tears fell freely now. She had feared this day for months, dreading the custody hearing, worrying about what might happen if the system failed her child. Yet here in the crucible of the courtroom, Lily's courage and Max's instincts were forging a path toward justice. "It's okay, baby," Jennifer whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. "You're safe now." Lily, unwavering, simply nodded, eyes fixed, as if understanding the full weight of the moment. The man attempted to speak, but his voice was weak, trembling under the scrutiny. This is absurd," he stammered. "A toddler and a dog cannot." His protest died in the tense air, ignored by the room now unified in silent comprehension. His words were meaningless here. The weight of instinct and innocence outweighed decades of legal maneuvering. Detective Morales motioned for officers to approach cautiously. "We need to remove him from the courtroom immediately," Morales instructed, voice low but firm. "There's enough here to act on precautionary measures. The child's safety is non-negotiable." Ramirez nodded, keeping Max alert but restrained. The dog's focus never wavered, a living sentinel attuned to the threat only he and Lily could perceive. Whispers ran through the courtroom. Some spectators murmured disbelief. Others leaned closer, sensing the gravity of what was unfolding. Reporters adjusted cameras, some whispering urgent notes into microphones. Social media, still largely unaware, would soon erupt with footage capturing the tension, the courage, and the inexplicable alignment of toddler and dog. The energy in the room was electric, charged with fear, suspense, and awe. Judge Carter, feeling the weight of responsibility press down on her shoulders, tapped the gavel sharply. "Order! Security will escort the individual immediately," she commanded, her voice echoing with authority tempered by apprehension. She had never experienced a moment like this, the law colliding with instinct, the innocence of a child amplifying the urgency of a threat. This was more than a custody hearing. It was a revelation, a confrontation with danger in its rawest form. The man was guided from his seat, shoulders slumped, panic shadowing his every movement. Max remained alert, growling softly, as if signaling to authorities, "Don't underestimate him." The room's attention never wavered, locked onto the man's retreat, understanding that his actions had been revealed not through testimony or documentation, but through the undeniable clarity of a child's perception and a dog's instinct. Jennifer held Lily close, feeling both pride and lingering terror. Her daughter, only 3 years old, had altered the course of events with 2 words. Her tiny voice, often dismissed as infantile, carried the power to expose danger and command action. Tears blurred Jennifer's vision as she whispered again, "You did it, baby girl. You're so brave." Lily's hand rested calmly on Max's back, a gesture of trust and partnership that resonated through the room like a silent declaration. Together, they were unstoppable. Detective Morales approached Judge Carter, lowering his voice. "Your Honor, we need to follow up immediately. If this man is connected to prior child endangerment complaints, and if Lily's identification is accurate, there may be additional risks. The child may not have been the only victim." The words hung heavily, a chilling reminder that the courtroom's drama was just the first layer of a deeper, more dangerous reality. The judge's eyes narrowed. She felt the weight of the entire situation pressing on her. The immediate safety of Lily, the legal procedures she was sworn to uphold, and the moral responsibility she now faced. Her gavel felt heavy in her hand, a symbolic instrument of authority in a situation that transcended any precedent. The courtroom, once a controlled environment of legal formality, had transformed into a crucible of instinct, courage, and truth. Max's low growl persisted as the man was escorted out. The dog's eyes swept the room, alert for any remaining threats, ears perked for any sign of danger. Every person in the room felt the shift, a subtle, electric awareness that justice was no longer confined to statutes alone. It existed in that moment in the partnership of a child and her dog, in their courage, perception, and unyielding resolve. Jennifer exhaled deeply, still holding Lily close. Her daughter's calm demeanor belied the chaos around them. "You were amazing," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. The toddler simply looked up, wide-eyed but composed, as if she understood her role had not ended. The room, meanwhile, buzzed with whispers, cameras, and the unspoken realization that what they had witnessed defied explanation, yet demanded acknowledgement. The reporters in the back scribbled furiously, noting the child's words, Max's behavior, and the man's panicked reaction. This story would travel beyond the courtroom walls, beyond Houston, becoming a tale of instinct, courage, and the unexpected heroes who sometimes emerge in the most unlikely forms. Social media would soon light up, with clips and eyewitness accounts spreading rapidly, igniting debate, awe, and admiration for a toddler who had spoken 2 words that altered the trajectory of justice. As the courtroom began to settle, Detective Morales motioned for Ramirez to accompany him outside. "We need to investigate further," Morales said. "This is just the beginning. The man's prior records suggest a broader pattern, and if Lily's observations are correct, more children could be at risk." Ramirez nodded, keeping Max at heel, still alert, still focused. The tension had not dissipated. It had simply shifted, evolving into the next stage of a story far larger than anyone in the room had anticipated. Judge Carter, still seated at the bench, stared down at the polished wood. She felt the enormity of the moment pressing upon her, the convergence of law, instinct, and courage. The courtroom had witnessed something extraordinary. A toddler and a German shepherd had revealed a truth no adult could have unearthed alone. And though immediate danger had been addressed, a chilling awareness settled in her mind. This revelation was only the beginning. Something larger, something hidden, was still out there waiting. The courtroom slowly emptied, but the atmosphere remained charged. Spectators, reporters, and even the lawyers felt the lingering energy of what had transpired. Lily's courage and Max's instincts had changed the course of events, but the ripple effects were only beginning. Outside the courthouse, sunlight reflected off the wet streets, but inside, a storm had been unleashed, a storm that no amount of procedure, law, or order could fully contain. And in the shadows, where few eyes could see, a presence stirred, aware that 2 little words spoken by a 3-year-old had unveiled secrets that were never meant to be revealed. The tension, suspense, and danger were far from over. The courtroom had quieted, but the air was still thick with tension. Judge Carter sat behind her bench, staring at the polished wood as if it could offer guidance. Her hands hovered over the gavel, knuckles pale from gripping it too tightly. She had faced high-stakes cases, violent confrontations, and media scrutiny, but nothing could have prepared her for the current scenario. A toddler and a police dog had just upended the usual flow of justice, revealing a danger the adults had overlooked. Now the law itself seemed inadequate, a fragile system struggling to contain the raw power of instinct and truth. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed as reporters jockeyed for the best angles, phones in hand, ready to capture every detail. Social media was buzzing, although no footage had yet been released publicly. The story would go viral, and Judge Carter knew it. She had to make decisions not just for the sake of the law, but for the safety of the child, the integrity of the courtroom, and the credibility of the justice system. One wrong move could have ramifications far beyond this case. Detective Morales and Officer Ramirez conferred quietly near the entrance. Morales' expression was grim. "Your Honor, procedurally, a toddler's words aren't admissible evidence," he said, his voice calm but edged with urgency. "But her identification paired with Max's behavior confirms that this man represents a threat. We cannot ignore it. If he's released, more children could be at risk." Ramirez nodded, keeping Max alert, ready for any movement from the man or the surrounding crowd. The dog's ears twitched at every sound, body coiled like a spring, a living sentinel. The man's attorney rose, face pale and slick with sweat, hands shaking slightly. "Your Honor, this is preposterous. A child and a dog cannot dictate the outcome of a legal proceeding. Procedural rules exist for a reason. My client demands due process." The courtroom murmured in response. Some spectators nodded in agreement, Others leaned forward, captivated by the surreal drama unfolding. Judge Carter listened patiently, but her mind was occupied with the larger implications. The law was clear, yet the truth had spoken in ways the law could not fully encompass. Jennifer clutched Lily close, feeling her daughter's small hand tremble slightly. "It's okay, baby girl," she whispered, her voice steady but tight with emotion. Lily's gaze, however, remained unflinching, focused entirely on Max and the man. The tiny child had already grasped a concept adults often struggled with. Instinct and courage could reveal truths that paperwork and testimony sometimes obscured. Max's low growl reinforced the unspoken reality. The threat had not passed, and no adult in the room could ignore it. Judge Carter inhaled deeply, weighing the options. Procedural correctness dictated that the man could not be immediately detained based solely on Lily's words. Yet instinct, evidence from prior cases, and the clear, visceral reactions of both child and dog suggested that releasing him posed an unacceptable risk. The judge's mind raced through the legal implications, the potential media backlash, and most importantly, the safety of a vulnerable child. Finally she spoke, her voice firm but measured. "We are in uncharted territory," she began, eyes sweeping the room. While a toddler's statement cannot ordinarily serve as legal evidence, the totality of circumstances, including the behavior of law enforcement and their K-9, past complaints, and immediate threat assessment, demands caution. The individual in question will remain in custody pending further investigation. Any objections will be addressed in due course. The courtroom stirred, some nodding, some muttering, but the tension remained palpable. Outside the gallery, reporters whispered furiously, "Did you see that toddler? And the dog? Incredible. This is going to be all over social media by noon." They were already drafting their headlines, unaware that the story's implications were far deeper than a viral clip or sensational article. Inside, Judge Carter felt the weight of responsibility settle even heavier. This case was no longer about custody alone. It was about ensuring justice in a situation where conventional law met raw, undeniable instinct. Detective Morales motioned for Officer Ramirez to accompany him to a private office. "We need to review his background more thoroughly," Morales said. "Prior complaints associates everything. If Lily's observation is accurate, there could be other victims. We cannot risk waiting for legal procedures to catch up." Ramirez nodded, keeping Max close, who remained alert, scanning every movement, every shadow, as if aware that danger might still be lurking. Meanwhile, Jennifer held Lily, feeling both awe and terror at her daughter's courage. "You were amazing," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. Lily's small eyes met hers, steady, confident, as if she understood that her words had already shifted the course of events. There was a power in innocence, Jennifer realized, a force the law often underestimated but could never fully ignore. The man in custody was escorted out under heavy watch, his face pale and tight. He had tried to appear calm, but the weight of exposure was crushing. His eyes darted nervously, aware that cameras and witnesses alike had captured his unraveling composure. Max growled lowly, a subtle reminder that the danger he represented was still tangible. The courtroom, though attempting to return to normalcy, remained tense, alive with the resonance of a moment that would be remembered far beyond its walls. Judge Carter's mind continued to race. She knew that decisions had been made not purely based on law, but on an extraordinary confluence of intuition, courage, and instinct. And yet, she also understood that the consequences of these decisions would echo outward, in the media, in the community, and most critically, in the lives of children who might otherwise remain unprotected. She tapped the gavel once, then paused, sensing the lingering unease that permeated the room. Outside the courtroom, the press swarmed, capturing glimpses of Jennifer, Lily, and Max. Reporters whispered excitedly into microphones, cameras flashing incessantly. The story would explode across social media, with clips of the toddler pointing and the dog reacting already going viral in seconds. But the story's significance ran deeper than the spectacle. It was a stark reminder that sometimes truth emerges in unexpected forms, beyond the confines of procedure, beyond the reach of conventional reasoning. Back in the courtroom, Judge Carter leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "We must proceed with caution," she muttered to herself, aware that the next steps would require both prudence and courage. Legal precedent had never accounted for such a situation, a toddler and a dog influencing the immediate custody of a potential threat. But the immediate reality was undeniable. Action had to be taken to prevent further harm, regardless of how unprecedented it seemed. Detective Morales escorted the man to a secure holding area, where officers prepared to question him further. Max remained at the threshold, vigilant, ears perked, body coiled, ready to respond to any sudden movement. Lily's small hand rested lightly on the dog's back, a symbolic partnership that had already altered the trajectory of justice. For a child, the world was often full of shadows, but here, courage and instinct had illuminated a path adults had failed to see. Jennifer breathed a small sigh of relief, though tension still coiled in her stomach. She knew the fight wasn't over, that the ramifications of this morning's events would ripple far beyond the courtroom. Yet for a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to marvel at Lily's bravery. The tiny girl had spoken 2 words that had reshaped an entire proceeding. Bad man. Simple, powerful, and transformative. Judge Carter's gavel finally fell, signaling a temporary pause in proceedings. But even as the room attempted to return to order, the electric tension remained. Spectators whispered, cameras clicked, and officers exchanged glances. The courtroom had witnessed something extraordinary, a collision of innocence, instinct, and justice that defied conventional boundaries. The questions now loomed larger. How far would this investigation go? Could the system protect the vulnerable in time? And what other dangers might remain hidden, waiting to be revealed? Outside, sunlight glinted off the courthouse windows, casting long shadows across the polished steps. Inside, Judge Carter remained seated, hands gripping the gavel, eyes fixed on the empty bench where the man had once sat. She understood the enormity of what had transpired and the challenges that lay ahead. The courtroom had been transformed from a venue of law into a theater of truth, courage, and instinct. And somewhere, in the shadows beyond the courthouse walls, forces she could not yet see were already in motion. The story, she knew, was far from over. By mid-afternoon, the courthouse steps were swarming. Television crews, social media influencers, and journalists from every corner of Houston jostled for position, eager to capture even a glimpse of the child who had turned an ordinary custody hearing into a national spectacle. Reporters whispered urgently into microphones, their cameras trained on Jennifer and Lily, who were escorted by Detective Morales and Officer Ramirez. Max walked beside them, alert and calm, yet his body radiated readiness, a living sentinel amidst the chaotic scene. Jennifer's heart raced with a mix of fear and incredulity. She had never imagined that a custody hearing could attract this level of attention. Shutter clicks and murmured questions filled the air, a wave of human curiosity and obsession that pressed down on her chest. Yet, through it all, Lily remained composed, small hands folded in front of her, eyes darting occasionally to Max, her quiet reassurance in the midst of chaos. There was a gravity in her tiny posture that belied her age. She carried herself like a child who had already seen too much and understood too deeply. Inside the courthouse, Judge Carter convened a private meeting with Detective Morales, Officer Ramirez, and a senior court administrator. "This has gone far beyond a custody hearing," she said, her voice low but firm. "The child's statements and the dog's behavior have drawn unprecedented public attention. We need to ensure her safety, maintain order, and follow protocol, but also understand that this is now a matter of public interest." Morales nodded gravely. "We're coordinating with Child Protective Services and additional security. But, Your Honor, there's more to uncover. The man in custody has a history that suggests possible ongoing risk. We need to act quickly." Outside, a cluster of reporters were whispering excitedly, already drafting headlines. "Toddler points out danger. German Shepherd confirms suspicion, and 3-year-old and K9 rewrite custody drama. News vans line the streets, their satellite trucks and antennas forming jagged silhouettes against the afternoon sky. Bystanders craned their necks, smartphones in hand, recording and sharing, unaware that the story they were capturing was more than just a viral sensation. It was a window into a hidden truth, a danger that had gone unnoticed until now. Jennifer felt the pressure mounting. She held Lily close, trying to shield her from the attention, though she knew it was impossible. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, brushing a lock of hair from Lily's forehead. The toddler simply looked up at her, calm, unwavering, as if understanding the magnitude of her actions. Max, sensing her mother's tension, leaned slightly into Jennifer, ears flicking, muscles coiled, eyes scanning for threats. The bond between child, mother, and dog had deepened in these tense hours, forming an unspoken trinity of protection and vigilance. Back inside, the man's attorney pounded the table with a fist, frustration evident in every twitch of his face. "Your Honor, we demand due process. My client has rights and this is becoming a circus. A child cannot dictate the outcome of a case." The judge listened patiently, yet her focus was on the truth emerging before her. Legal precedents could be cited, arguments presented, but instinct, courage, and the clarity of Lily's words had already altered the trajectory of the case. Detective Morales returned to his office with Ramirez and Max to review prior complaints and records. The documents told a chilling story: allegations of child endangerment, reports of suspicious behavior, all previously dismissed due to lack of corroborating evidence. But Lily's testimony and Max's behavior provided a lens through which the patterns became undeniable. Morales realized that the investigation was no longer about hypothetical risk. It was about imminent danger and preventing further harm. Meanwhile, the public's fascination grew. Social media clips of Lily pointing and speaking, Max growling in protective confirmation had already gone viral. Comments flooded platforms: awe, fear, disbelief. Some praised her bravery, others questioned the authenticity. But the overwhelming sentiment was clear. A toddler and a dog had revealed a truth adults had ignored. The courtroom drama had become a national story, its emotional tension and cinematic unfolding capturing imaginations across the country. Jennifer felt both pride and anxiety. She knew that the story's reach would bring scrutiny, perhaps even danger. But Lily had acted instinctively, courageously, revealing a threat that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. She whispered softly, "You were amazing, baby girl." Lily's gaze remained calm, resting briefly on Max, as if acknowledging the partnership that had saved the day and continued to protect them. At the courthouse, Judge Carter made an executive decision. She convened an emergency hearing, limiting attendance to essential personnel, law enforcement, and the immediate family. Media access was restricted, but the proceedings remained public through secure channels. The goal: protect Lily and Max while allowing legal and investigative processes to unfold without endangering the child or contaminating the case. It was an unprecedented move, reflecting the extraordinary nature of the situation. Inside the hearing room, tension thickened. The man in custody was restless, aware that public attention and law enforcement scrutiny had shifted the balance of power. His attempts at composure faltered. His lawyer whispered frantic instructions, but even legal strategy could not undo the impact of 2 words spoken by a child and validated by a dog. The court was a stage, and the actors were no longer adults alone. Truth had emerged through innocence and instinct. Outside, Max remained alert, positioning himself between Lily and any approaching threats. His eyes scanned every face, every movement, attuned to danger beyond human perception. For a toddler, the world was often full of shadows, but with Max by her side, Lily navigated the chaos with astonishing poise. Their connection had deepened beyond trust. It was instinctual, unspoken, and formidable. Detective Morales reviewed the man's records again, noting inconsistencies, prior complaints, and uncorroborated incidents. A pattern emerged: behavior that suggested manipulation, intimidation, and endangerment, previously dismissed due to lack of direct evidence. But Lily's identification had shifted everything. A child's simple words, coupled with Max's trained response, had revealed a threat adults had failed to perceive. The implications were chilling. There could be others affected, others vulnerable, waiting for someone to act. Jennifer watched as Morales and Ramirez moved efficiently, coordinating the next steps. She whispered to Lily, who leaned slightly against Max, calm and resolute. "You've done something amazing today," she said, voice thick with emotion. The toddler simply nodded, eyes wide but focused, as if understanding the magnitude of her actions without fully grasping the public spectacle surrounding them. Judge Carter, meanwhile, drafted a series of orders to ensure immediate child protection while preserving the integrity of the case. Security was tightened, media controlled, and law enforcement mobilized to investigate the man's associates and potential prior victims. Every precaution reflected the extraordinary situation. A child and a dog had revealed a danger that had previously gone unnoticed, forcing adults to confront truths they had ignored. As afternoon faded into evening, the tension outside the courthouse showed no signs of abating. Cameras continued to flash, whispers and murmurs circulated, and social media erupted with clips and commentary. Inside, Judge Carter and law enforcement worked with precision, aware that the unfolding investigation could uncover far-reaching implications. Max's vigilance never wavered, a constant, steady presence in a world suddenly fraught with danger. Jennifer took a deep breath, holding Lily close. The adrenaline of the morning had not faded, but she felt a fragile sense of pride and relief. Her daughter had spoken 2 words, "bad man," that had altered the course of events, saving her from harm and exposing a hidden threat. Yet the story was far from over. There were layers still to uncover, consequences still to face, and dangers still lurking beyond the immediate scene. Max rested his head lightly against Jennifer's leg, ears twitching at every sound. Lily's small hand rested on his back, a connection that had become unbreakable. Together, they had transformed a routine custody hearing into a confrontation with truth and instinct, a revelation that resonated far beyond the walls of the courthouse. As night approached, Judge Carter reviewed the day's proceedings, aware that the story was only beginning. Public fascination would continue to grow, the investigation would deepen, and the extraordinary courage of a toddler and her dog would remain at the center of a narrative that defied conventional understanding. Somewhere beyond the courthouse, the man's past, and possibly his allies, remained a threat waiting, and Judge Carter knew the unfolding drama was far from over. The world had witnessed the impossible, innocence and instinct exposing danger that adults could not. And as Max's ears flicked toward a distant sound, alert and unyielding, everyone present understood one undeniable truth. The story had only just begun, and the next chapter would be more dangerous, more suspenseful, and more shocking than anyone could yet imagine. The next morning, the courthouse was eerily quiet compared to the previous day's chaos, yet tension lingered like a storm cloud ready to burst. Officer Ramirez kept Max close, the dog's ears constantly twitching, muscles coiled in silent vigilance. Detective Morales reviewed every piece of the man's background again, his eyes scanning for inconsistencies, threats, or overlooked details. Every file, every note, every dismissed complaint suddenly carried weight. The system's past oversights now felt like dangerous gaps, a reminder that the man before them had likely been calculating and patient, waiting for the right moment. Jennifer held Lily's small hand, feeling the child's confidence steady against her own trembling. They moved slowly through the hall, flanked by law enforcement, aware of the media outside but shielded from its glare. Lily's gaze occasionally flicked toward Max, her tiny hand brushing his fur as if to draw reassurance. Despite the calm exterior, Jennifer could sense the undercurrent of fear, the realization that the man they had confronted yesterday had not been neutralized entirely. Inside the secured courtroom, Judge Carter convened a closed hearing with Morales, Ramirez, and a senior prosecutor. "We need a strategy," she said, her voice low but firm. "Yesterday revealed the immediate danger, but it also revealed potential for escalation. He knows he's exposed. We cannot predict what he might do next." Morales nodded grimly. "We've seen similar cases," he replied. "When individuals are cornered publicly, they often act irrationally and dangerously. Every possible precaution must be in place." Outside, news crews whispered urgently among themselves, speculating wildly. Clips from yesterday had already gone viral, with millions watching a toddler and a German shepherd dominate a courtroom drama like a scene from a Hollywood thriller. Comments flooded social media. "This child is fearless. The dog knows the truth. Did that man just crumble under a toddler's words?" The spectacle had become a public obsession, yet few realized that the story's next chapter was unfolding far from the cameras. Back inside, the man in custody paced nervously, muttering under his breath. His lawyer tried to calm him, but his eyes darted to the security doors, calculating escape routes and weighing risks. The previous day's humiliation had fractured his composure, replaced by desperation and an increasingly dangerous sense of urgency. He had been cornered, exposed, and now he knew, if he did not act, his plans and past would be laid bare. Max's low growl rumbled across the room as the man's packing intensified. The dog's instincts, honed over years of training, detected subtle cues, tremors, shifts in weight, micro-expressions that the human eye often missed. Officer Ramirez adjusted his grip on the leash, sensing the same tension. Max's behavior was a silent warning. The man was contemplating something, and it might be immediate and it might be dangerous. Jennifer, aware of the growing tension, drew Lily closer. "Stay close, baby girl," she whispered, voice tight. Lily's small hand rested firmly on Max's back, her eyes wide but composed. The bond between child and dog had deepened into something almost instinctual, a partnership of courage and awareness. Together, they were attuned to danger, each reading the other's signals, forming a line of defense that few could comprehend. Suddenly, the man lunged not at a person but toward a concealed exit in the back of the room. Security reacted instantly, but the move was deliberate, practiced. Morales shouted, "Stop him," as officers converged. Max barked sharply, advancing a step, hackles raised, muscles tense. The dog's behavior cut through the chaos like a warning siren. He positioned himself between the man and Lily, teeth bared slightly, growl deep and resonant. In an instant, instincts collided with human calculation. The man froze for a split second, startled by Max's readiness. His eyes widened in disbelief. He had underestimated the dog's awareness, the child's influence over the situation, and the coordination between instinct and training. Sweat beaded along his forehead, and his hands trembled as he realized that the predictable paths he had considered were no longer viable. Max's growl intensified, echoing through the room and commanding attention. Jennifer instinctively stepped forward, holding Lily firmly. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, heart racing. The toddler, for her part, remained calm, almost unnervingly composed. Her small hand brushed Max's back, a silent signal of trust and connection. Together, the two of them were a force, a blend of innocence and instinct that had already altered the course of events once, and now stood ready to do so again. Security officers closed in, but Morales recognized that Max was more than just backup. He was the first line of defense. The dog's focus was unparalleled, his instincts attuned to the man's every movement, every intention. Ramirez whispered to Morales, "He's not just reacting. He knows something coming." Morales nodded, realizing the truth. They were witnessing a standoff fueled by desperation, exposure, and raw fear. The man tried to lunge again, this time directly toward a side door that led to the courthouse's outer perimeter. Max barked, growled, and shifted his stance, cutting off the path. The man hesitated, momentarily frozen in disbelief at the dog's awareness and authority. This pause was all it took. Morales and the officers surged forward, restraining him firmly while Max remained alert, scanning for any secondary threats. The situation was contained, but barely. Outside the secured perimeter, reporters were frantic, their cameras capturing only glimpses of the tension. Clips would later circulate showing blurred movements, flashes of a German shepherd in alert posture, and a small child standing quietly but decisively, a tableau of courage and chaos that would captivate the nation. Few realized how close the situation had come to spiraling entirely out of control, how easily exposure could have escalated into danger far beyond the courtroom walls. Jennifer exhaled shakily, holding Lily tightly. "You did it, baby girl," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. Lily's gaze remained steady, small hand resting lightly on Max, as if acknowledging the partnership that had saved them once again. Max's eyes scanned the room, unyielding, ears flicking toward every potential disturbance. The tension was not fully gone. The threat had been restrained but not neutralized. Judge Carter, observing from the bench, felt her pulse quicken. She had never presided over a case that combined legal procedure with instinct-driven confrontation. The law, for all its structure, could not anticipate the extraordinary courage displayed by a child and a dog acting in tandem. And yet she understood that this was real, immediate, and far from over. The man had been restrained, but his desperation and potential for retaliation remained. Detective Morales approached Judge Carter quietly. "We need to ensure he remains in custody until we complete the full investigation. This isn't over," he said. His tone was firm, underlining the gravity of the situation. "There may be accomplices or prior victims we haven't identified. If we release him, more lives could be at risk." The judge nodded, recognizing the delicate balance between procedure and protection. Outside, the media frenzy continued to swell. Social media posts went viral at a record pace. Clips of Lily pointing and speaking, Max responding with precision, the man's panicked movements, all framed in dramatic slow-motion sequences by news outlets eager to capture the cinematic quality of the confrontation. The story became a national sensation, a mix of awe, fear, and disbelief. But the public spectacle belied the seriousness of the threat. Something darker lingered beyond the cameras, unseen, waiting. Jennifer held Lily close, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You've been so brave today," she whispered. The toddler's calm gaze met her mother's briefly, then returned to Max's small hand resting lightly on the dog's back. Together, they had prevented disaster once again, a tiny child and a German shepherd acting as protectors, instincts aligned with courage in a way that adults could hardly comprehend. As the man was secured in custody, a chilling thought lingered in the room. What if this was only the beginning? Morales reviewed files, noting patterns and contacts, each revealing more threads of potential danger. The child's identification had unveiled a hidden truth, but the web of threats extended far beyond the immediate courtroom. Judge Carter realized that the upcoming proceedings would not only determine justice for Lily, but also prevent possible tragedies for other children, and perhaps other unsuspecting victims. And as Max's ears twitched at distant footsteps, alert and unyielding, everyone in the room understood one undeniable truth: the danger had not vanished. The man's desperation had exposed him, but his reach and the shadows of his past remained. The story was far from over, and the next chapter promised to be more suspenseful, more dangerous, and more shocking than anyone could yet imagine. The courthouse was tense the next morning, the kind of silence that pressed into the bones, thick and suffocating. The previous day's chaos had left echoes: reporters, cameras, whispers of a toddler and a dog altering the course of justice. Judge Carter entered the room, her steps measured, mind sharp with the weight of responsibility. Today was not just about legality. It was about truth, protection, and the culmination of events that had spiraled far beyond routine custody proceedings. Jennifer held Lily's hand, feeling the child's pulse calm and measured against her own racing heartbeat. Max walked beside them, ears flicking, muscles coiled, the living embodiment of vigilance. The partnership between child and dog had grown stronger in the past 24 hours, forged in tension, courage, and instinct. For a 3-year-old, the world had revealed itself as both dangerous and profound, yet Lily's bravery never wavered. Judge Carter tapped her gavel, bringing the room to order. This hearing will address both the immediate safety of the child and the ongoing investigation into the individual in custody, she began, voice steady but charged with authority. She glanced at Detective Morales, who nodded slightly, aware that the stakes had never been higher. The man in custody sat rigid, his face pale, the tension of exposure and public scrutiny written in every line. The courtroom observers leaned forward, some whispering, others holding their breath. Cameras captured the scene, Lily sitting composedly beside her mother, hand resting lightly on Max, who remained alert, unwavering. The story had already gone viral, yet no footage could fully convey the emotional depth, the courage of a tiny child, the loyalty and instinct of a German shepherd, and the palpable tension of a man whose carefully hidden past had been laid bare. Detective Morales presented new evidence, tying the man to previously dismissed complaints of child endangerment and manipulation. "Your Honor," he said, voice low but firm, "the child's identification, corroborated by trained K-9 behavior, aligns with patterns in the suspect's history. We are confident that continued custody is required to protect not only this child but potential other victims." Morales' words resonated in the room. This was not conjecture. It was truth, undeniable and irrefutable when paired with instinct and courage. The man's attorney rose, face strained. "Your Honor, this is extraordinary. A toddler's words and a dog's reactions cannot substitute for due process. My client requests a fair trial in accordance with legal protocol." Judge Carter's gaze hardened. She had navigated procedural arguments countless times, yet here she faced a reality that law books could not fully contain. She addressed the room. "We are not ignoring procedure. But in extraordinary circumstances, the safety of children and the preservation of life take precedence. The evidence today, instinctual, historical, and corroborated, is sufficient to maintain custody and continue investigation." Jennifer exhaled quietly, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. Lily's small hand squeezed hers, calm, measured, almost aware of the gravity of her actions. Max shifted slightly, still alert, sensing the room's tension and any subtle signs of danger. The three of them, child, mother, and dog, stood together as a formidable presence, their courage and vigilance silently commanding the courtroom. The man in custody was visibly shaken. His plans, carefully hidden secrets, and threats to others had been exposed. Sweat glistened on his forehead, hands trembling. His lawyer whispered frantically, but the man's eyes remained locked on Lily and Max. The dynamic was undeniable. A toddler and a dog had upended his control, and the courtroom collectively understood the magnitude. This was no longer a matter of legal argument alone. The truth had spoken in forms he could not manipulate. Outside, the media captured every nuance. The child pointing confidently, the dog growling lightly, the man's tense posture. Social media erupted further, millions watching, sharing, and reacting in awe. Headlines blared. 3-year-old and German shepherd alter justice. Toddler points out danger, dog confirms threat. Courtroom drama unfolds like Hollywood thriller. Yet beyond the spectacle there was a profound lesson. Truth sometimes manifests in the smallest, most unexpected forms. Judge Carter continued, delivering a measured but firm decree. The court orders that the child remain in protective custody with her mother. The individual in question will remain detained for further investigation, with law enforcement tasked to ensure no other potential victims are at risk. We acknowledge the extraordinary contributions of both the child and the trained K-9 in ensuring safety and revealing threats that would otherwise have gone unnoticed. Her words echoed through the courtroom, final and commanding. Detective Morales stepped forward, ensuring the man was securely escorted out. Max remained at attention, muscles taut, eyes unwavering. He had been more than a trained dog. He had been a guardian, a sentinel whose instincts had identified danger before human eyes could. Lily's small hand rested lightly on his back, a gesture of trust, acknowledgement, and partnership. Together, they had changed the outcome of events in ways that would resonate far beyond the courthouse walls. Jennifer hugged Lily tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You were so brave," she whispered. Lily looked up, calm and composed, as if she already understood the impact of her words. Max leaned slightly into Jennifer, tail wagging lightly, signaling reassurance. The tiny trio had faced fear, chaos, and the unknown, and emerged not only unscathed but victorious. Outside the courthouse, crowds began to disperse, some murmuring awe, others snapping photos. Social media was ablaze, but the deeper story, the courage, instinct, and moral clarity demonstrated by a 3-year-old and a dog, would continue to ripple. Jennifer realized that the world might focus on the spectacle, but the truth, the lessons of vigilance, bravery, and the importance of listening to innocence would remain far longer than the headlines. Judge Carter remained at the bench, contemplating the unprecedented day. The law had been challenged, reshaped momentarily by instinct and courage, yet she knew the outcome reflected not chaos but clarity. Max and Lily had provided insight that no legal brief could offer, proving that courage and instinct sometimes reveal truths the adult mind overlooks. The courtroom had witnessed the extraordinary, and the precedent, though informal, was undeniable. Vigilance and bravery could alter the course of justice. In the following days, the investigation expanded. Law enforcement followed leads, uncovering additional threats and ensuring potential victims were protected. Media outlets continued to cover the story, focusing on Lily's words and Max's behavior. Jennifer, protective yet proud, allowed glimpses into their lives, careful to shield Lily from undue attention while acknowledging the heroic partnership between child and dog. The story became an emblem of courage, a reminder of how even the smallest voices could alter the course of events. Max was awarded a commendation from the department, recognized for his exceptional instincts and protection of the child. Lily, too young to understand accolades fully, received praise in ways she could grasp: extra treats, gentle pats, and the unwavering acknowledgement of adults who had witnessed her bravery. Yet for Jennifer, the true reward was simple: the safety of her daughter, and the bond they shared with Max, which had proven unbreakable. The man in custody faced charges that reflected the seriousness of his actions, with evidence now corroborated through investigation and the extraordinary circumstances that had brought him to light. Justice, tempered with vigilance and courage, had been achieved. Yet the lesson lingered. Truth could emerge from the smallest, most unexpected places, and the world was richer for those willing to listen and act upon it. As the sun set over Houston, Jennifer, Lily, and Max walked home together. The city hummed around them, unaware of the quiet heroism that had unfolded within its courthouse. Lily's hand rested lightly on Max's fur, a symbol of trust, bravery, and partnership. Jennifer glanced down at her daughter, marveling at the strength and clarity in her tiny frame. They had faced fear, chaos, and uncertainty, and together they had prevailed. In the end, the courtroom drama became more than a viral story. It became a testament to courage, instinct, and the extraordinary impact of innocence when allied with loyalty and vigilance. And somewhere in the quiet corners of the courthouse, Judge Carter reflected on what she had witnessed, a reminder that justice was not only the product of law but also the guardianship of those willing to act with courage, no matter their size, age, or form. The story closed on a note of triumph, yet its resonance would endure far longer than the headlines. A tiny child, a German shepherd, and a mother had altered the course of events through bravery, instinct, and truth. Chaos had been confronted, danger neutralized, and justice served, all because 2 little words and a vigilant dog revealed what the world had overlooked. And in that quiet, victorious moment, Max nudged Lily gently, tail wagging lightly, as if to say, "We did it together." Lily smiled faintly, small hand resting on his fur, eyes reflecting trust and understanding. The unseen heroes of the day had spoken, acted, and triumphed, leaving an indelible mark on the courthouse, the city, and the hearts of all who would come to hear their story.